Hey everyone, it's Chris at Service Autopilot. Welcome to our virtual summit this year. It's so crazy that we're meeting this way, but I'm really glad that we get to do this event still, regardless of the situation that's happening in the world. So wherever you find yourself, whether it's in your living room or your office or listening in your car or wherever, we welcome you and we're so glad that you're here joining us. So my name is Chris Sims. I've worked at Service Autopilot for about 9 years now, and I've done several different roles over the course of that time. I've worked in support, I've worked in sales, marketing, and now I am more on the product side of the business. So for the last couple of years, my title has been product owner, and I've worked closely with John Caldwell in the past and now Jason Sellers, who I'll introduce to you shortly. He now heads up our product team, and he'll explain more about what that is and what that means to you once we're finished here. We're going to talk a little bit about V3, of course. So last year at the conference, John and I showcased the 3 initial version 3 releases. So we showed you a little bit about the transaction screens. Internally, we called those the core 4. So that was your invoices, your payments, your checks, and then we showed you accounts, which was a reimagining of clients and leads. And we also added functionality around properties. And so the third and final release for V3 of 2020 is going to be tickets, which we showed you last year. But today, we're going to show you everything that there is to know about tickets, as this release is coming up in this month of November. So let's dive into tickets and take a look at what and why they are. So tickets are a new way in Service Autopilot to log and track conversations, so perhaps phone or email conversations, to track issues, and also non-billable tasks for your accounts. So really, tickets replaces and enhances the previous features of to-dos and calls in version 2. So why did we feel like we needed to enhance that functionality? Well, for one, it was a little confusing, especially for newer members and newer people getting trained on calls and to-dos, what each one was used for, why they existed in 2 different places. And also, as you know, resolving issues can often span multiple calls, multiple emails. Maybe you have to take a trip to the property to fix something that was broken, or for an estimate request, you need to go measure something on the property. And all of this conversation should be collected in one place in the system, so you're not having to go jump through a bunch of different calls and a bunch of different to-dos to really track the history of that issue. There was really previously no intuitive way to keep all of those points of contacts together in one single record in the system. And of course, people had workarounds. People would, in fact, hire staff members, either part-time or full-time, depending on the size of the company, that were doing things like logging emails into to-dos so that you could keep track of your customers' conversations with you. And many people, like I said, this was an extremely manual process, and it cost members a lot of money to really keep track of this correctly in Service Autopilot if you wanted to do it right. So that's where tickets come in. Let's talk a little bit about some ticket features. So the first item on a ticket is a note. Notes are internal notes about an issue or a conversation with a client or a lead, or perhaps just a note that you want to keep about some issue in the company. Now, this would be replacing old to-do functionality without a schedule date. So to-dos that did not show up on the dispatch board. And in version 3, all of these editors now have what you see is what you get functionality. So it allows you to do more formatting. You can attach pictures. You can put videos into these, links, anything that you want. It's just much more robust of a tool for logging notes about an issue. Next, we have calls. Calls are similar to notes, except that they indicate that the note being taken is related to either an inbound or an outbound call to log the issue. So a customer calls you, they have a complaint, or they have a question, they have some sort of concern. You can log a call, and that will create a ticket with a call record on it. So this replaces the old call functionality in version 2. Next, perhaps most importantly, most exciting at least, is emails. Emails can now be sent to accounts straight through tickets, and any email that's sent from any other part of the system will automatically create a ticket and log that email that you sent and attach it to the ticket. Now, there's going to be optional functionality. Unfortunately, we really wanted to get it in this initial release of tickets. It's going to be in a second iteration, hopefully in about a month or so, not too far out. It's going to be the next major feature release that we have, but there will be an optional feature to also have inbound emails automatically pulled into Service Autopilot and logged as tickets. So in that scenario, inbound emails that are replies to existing tickets, or let's say that you emailed a client an upsell email, or you emailed them because you needed to get an updated credit card or something like that, that would create a ticket with an outbound email record on it. And then when that customer or that lead replies to that email, Service Autopilot will read that email in and automatically attach the reply to the same ticket. So this is going to be similar to viewing email conversations in an email client, like a Gmail or an Outlook or something like that. Except it's all done within Service Autopilot and connected to the correct account. So like I said, this is not, unfortunately, in the initial release. In the past, you've probably heard us refer to this functionality as a Gmail integration. Actually, it's no longer going to be a Gmail integration. We have done some rework on this project, and we've made it work with any email provider. So whether you use Outlook or Gmail or Yahoo, or you have your own custom domain or whatever, this functionality will work for you. I will say this is going to be an optional subscription. So this is not going to just come with your default account. I'm not going to speak too much into that today. I'll allow the sales and the marketing folks to talk to you guys about what the pricing around that's going to be. But know that even if you don't want this functionality, or you don't want to pay for this functionality, you don't have to have the integration for all of your outbound emails to automatically be logged as tickets. The last record that you can add to a ticket is a calendar event. So calendar events are something that actually exist in Service Autopilot today, but we've repurposed them. Calendar events are scheduled tasks related to a ticket. So something where you're sending a resource either to the property or to some other address to help resolve an issue. So new functionality around calendar events is that they can actually have separate assignments from the rest of the ticket. So if you have a customer service representative or an account manager or whatever you call that person in your business, the ticket can be assigned to them so that they could keep track of it, but you could still assign that scheduled appointment for one of your field staff to go help with the issue. And this will be shown and routed on the dispatch board and on the calendar along with any other visits or jobs that that resource has. So it goes right onto their actual working schedule. So this replaces version 2 to-dos that had a scheduled date. If you're familiar with version 2 to-dos, they don't initially show on the dispatch board. They don't initially show on the calendar, but if you add a scheduled date to them and an assignment, then they show up and they can be routed. We felt like this functionality was also a little bit hidden and confusing, and so we wanted to reimagine calendar events, which really were just time blocks on the calendar, and repurpose them to work with inside tickets to be separate schedulable tasks related to a ticket. So let's talk about statuses. As you can see, tickets now have 4 statuses instead of just the 2 of done or not done. The statuses are open, on hold, pending, and closed. So you can set statuses anytime you add a new item to the ticket. So when you add a new note or you send a new email, you get an option to set or update the status. Certain cases are going to automatically change that status. For example, if you're going to go with the new email integration, a new email that's pulled into Service Autopilot, so an inbound email, is going to automatically come in as open, so that when you're looking at your open tickets, that new email is going to show right up at the top of the list. Another example of statuses being set automatically would be bulk emailing. So as I mentioned before, when you send emails from Service Autopilot, excuse me, we're going to automatically create tickets. And that is true of bulk emails as well. However, we felt like it was a little overwhelming to, when you send an email blast of 100 upsell emails, for example, to your marketing list, to create a bunch of open tickets that somebody then has to go close. And so instead, what we've done is we automatically close those tickets. They'll be available on the client's record. And if they reply to them with the email integration, then the ticket automatically opens and you can start tracking it like normal. So what are the statuses? What do they mean? There's 4 of them. That's potentially a little bit confusing, but really it's more robust and gives you more information about the ticket. So let's talk about it. Really, it's subjective what a couple of the statuses mean, but here's what we suggest, and here's what we're going to train to you as you learn this new functionality. An open ticket is a ticket that action still needs to be taken on your end. So most brand new tickets, you're going to create them with an open status. Again, new emails that come in are going to automatically be marked as open because you need to reply to them. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, here are the next 2 that can get a little bit subjective, but here's what we suggest. On hold are tickets that need action from your end, but they're also blocked in some way on your end. So here's an example. Let's say that you broke something on the property. So you have a damage case and you need to go replace that item that you broke. But at the same time, you ordered a part and you have to wait for it to come in before you can even send somebody to the property to replace it. So we would suggest putting that item on hold until you get the part in, and now you can open it back up and track it along with the rest of your open tickets and prioritize it accordingly. But until that item comes in, there's really not much you can do with it. The next status is pending. So these are tickets that are also not resolved and they're waiting on action, but you're waiting for the customer's action. So the example would be that you send an estimate via email to the client, which would create a ticket, or I say a client or a lead, and you send them that estimate and you're expecting a reply, or you're expecting a response to that estimate. So you would want to mark that ticket as pending, because there is action that you could take. You could follow up again and again and again, but really you're still waiting on a response from them. And it kind of just keeps it separate from all of the other tickets that you just kind of haven't even touched yet, like your open tickets. And then the last status is closed. And this is fairly self-explanatory. These are just tickets that no further action is required at this time. So you have all of these records that can be logged to tickets: notes, calls, emails, calendar events. Where do all of these go? Well, they all display on the ticket review. And the main functionality of the ticket review is the timeline. And this is similar to the timeline on the account review. So this timeline is going to show you all those notes, calls, emails, and calendar events that are logged on the ticket. And it's searchable. You can flip it, showing it from oldest to newest. You can group it, all of the emails or all of the calls. And what's really great is that these records are on their own optimized database for super, super fast loading. So even if you have 10 or 20 emails in a thread that all have images on them and big files, this timeline is going to load super quick for you so that you can quickly search and scan. Next, you have in this conversation. As I mentioned before, tickets can go through a lot of different steps before they're finally resolved. You might have somebody that fields the initial phone call. That might get passed over to that account representative who then takes it from there and calls the customer back or emails them or whatever. And then you might finally send a crew member or a crew lead out to the property to work on fixing the issue. And in this conversation is going to show you all of the resources that have worked on this ticket without you having to dive into an audit trail and search for it that way. It's just a nice, easy way to see who all's been a part of the ticket. The next item is related items. So this is really cool functionality. You can actually now relate tickets to specific jobs or specific estimates that were sent. Also, other tickets that have been created can be related to one another. Now, this happens automatically, the connection of these items, if you do them from within the ticket. So if you add a job from within the ticket itself, it's going to automatically relate that job to the ticket. If you add an estimate, it's going to automatically relate the estimate. But if you didn't do it that way, if maybe it went out of that order, you can always manually connect them for future reference. And it just gives you a reference of how items are connected. And these are clickable linked items that allow you to quickly navigate between the items that are all related to one another for an issue. Next, you have the ticket edit. So this is where you're going to edit the primary ticket information. So things like assignments, things like due dates, the ticket category, which is a replacement of old to-do and call types in V2. As I mentioned, this is also where you can manually relate jobs, estimates, and other tickets to the ticket that you're currently editing. So that's the ticket review and edit. But where do all of the tickets live where you can work them in a list view? And that's the ticket list. So again, we're following the V3 design patterns that we've created so far on the accounting screens and the client and the lead list. We now have a true ticket list that works and functions like the other lists in the system. This was something in V2 that felt very disconnected and separate. You had one type of list for these records and they had certain filters on them. And then you had a to-do list and a separate call list that had different filters. They were in a different spot on the screen. The records looked different. And frankly, there was just kind of too much information even on the cards to quickly at a glance see what's happening with the ticket. So we've created a standardized ticket list. And like the other V3 list screens, you can customize this screen. You can customize the column layout, reorder the columns, choose which columns are most important to you, choose which ones you don't want to see, and the system will remember that for the future. There's, of course, a filtering system. So this is going to expand over time. In this initial release, we're giving you the most important information that you would want to filter on. So things like who the ticket's assigned to, the status of the ticket, the due date, what initiated the ticket. Was it a call? Was it an email that was sent? Was it a note that was logged? Allowing you to filter on specific accounts so that you can see all of the tickets for one account, etc. And like, again, other V3 list pages, you can save these filter sets for a quick recall of all the filters that you've chosen. So if you wanted to set a filter set of all of the open tickets that are assigned to you that have a due date in the next 7 days, it's very easy to do that. So we also have the common filter set list like other list screens in V3. And this will also be enhanced over time. But this serves to give you some suggestions of things you might want to look at. So we've got things like, if it was started by a call or an email, things that are due in the next 7 days, things are due that in the next day, etc. And again, we're going to expand that list over time as we get feedback of the common filters that people are using. So this list, the ticket list, replaces both the to-do list and the call list in V2. It's now one list. So those are all of the features of tickets. But let's talk about the rollout plan. So tickets is the first item in V3 that will be what we call a 0-day change. So what does that mean? Well, unlike other V3 features thus far, tickets is not going to run side by side with V2 to-dos and calls. We wanted to try to make this work, but with all of the new features that are being added to this functionality, an entirely new database had to be designed and optimized, and there was no way to make it backwards compatible with to-dos and calls because there's so many new items and so many different items on tickets. So they will not run side by side, unfortunately. I will say you do not have to completely switch over to V3 to use this functionality. If you're primarily using V2 right now, that's fine. Everything that's V2 will continue to be V2 for you in the system, but the ticket screens will all open in a new tab in the V3 environment, and you can work those tickets there. Now also, because this is a 0-day change, we're going to be doing a migration of all of the to-do and call information from V2 that you already have in your system. They're going to automatically move into the new V3 system so that they're there for you, ready to work, minimal disruption. So what does the migration look like? Well, in V2, let's say that you have a to-do. That will be migrated into a V3 ticket with that to-do logged as a note. As I mentioned, notes and to-dos are kind of the most comparable items in the new system. In V2, if you had a call logged, that's going to migrate into V3 to a ticket with a call logged on it. Kind of makes sense, right? In V2, if you had a to-do that was scheduled and assigned to a resource, that's going to be migrated into V3 as a ticket with a calendar event. And of course, if you had things like comments on these to-dos and calls, those are going to be migrated as well. They'll just be added as extra notes to the ticket, etc. So all of your due dates, all of your assignments, the to-do and call categories are going to be maintained. Again, they're called types, to-do and call types in V2. In V3, it's just called a ticket category. All of that's going to be maintained in the migration. And we've also, in the list page, created 2 common filters to make it super easy for you to right away mimic the 2 V2 lists. So if you primarily work in the call list, there's a common filter called started from a call. And if you click that filter on day 1 of tickets, boom, you're going to have the same list that you had in V2, all of the same calls listed out for you. And also, if you use to-dos in V2, the started from a note functionality or common filter that will be released initially is going to perfectly mimic your V2 to-do list. So again, this will be a day 0 change, but knowing this information, and we're going to continue to give this information out so that everybody is aware of it and can hear it and is prepared for it. But on day one of tickets, it's super easy to get back to the exact list that you worked with before. They'll just now be in the new ticket environment, and you can start working them that way. So that's tickets. Again, this is the third release of version 3 in Service Autopilot. Internally, we call it R3, and we're super excited to get it out to you. Again, we thought it was going to go a little bit faster. It's been a crazy year. It's now coming out in the last quarter of this year, and it's the biggest release, to be honest with you, that we have done. In my opinion, it's the biggest release that we've done since V2 was released many years ago. It's a big departure from V2, and of course, it's even more a departure being that it's a 0-day change, but we feel, and it's tested better in every way with our users. Honestly, V3, the rollout, we think it's been going great. We've gotten feedback from customers. We've been logging that feedback. In fact, you'll see a lot of the feedback that's been coming in from V3 implemented in this release of R3. I've only talked about tickets today, but there's actually a ton more that's in that release. Tickets is just the biggest item, but there's also many version 3 improvements that have been requested over the months that we have after we have put out the Core 4 screens as well as the account screen. So you'll be seeing a lot of those going into this release as well. However, one of the pieces that we feel like could definitely be improved upon on our end is what I would call the feedback loop. And that is having good ways to get your feedback, to test this new functionality with you, and implement that information into new designs and into new iterations. We felt like previously we had people working on this before, primarily myself and John Caldwell, but it just needed more. It needed a larger focus. And that is where Jason Sellers comes in. I'm going to introduce him to you now. He is a newer member of Service Autopilot. He's come onto the team this year, and he is really a product management expert. He's my new boss. He is the head of the product team, and he has come into Service Autopilot to build a true, robust product team and really to get this feedback loop mastered so that we can start moving forward with our product development in a way that includes you in every way possible. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jason. I hope you liked what you've seen today. We'll be able to answer any questions that you have about tickets. Like I said, there's going to be training available on all this stuff, so you will not be left in the dark when it comes to how to use this functionality. But I will say it's super intuitive. Once you get into it and you start clicking around on the screens and you start adding notes and adding calls, you're going to feel right at home. It feels honestly just like managing a task list. So again, hope you've really liked what you've seen. I'm going to pass it over to Jason. Enjoy the rest of this virtual summit. Thanks, guys.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to Thrive 2020. We'll give everybody just a moment to come in and get settled in their chairs and get their stuff in order, and then we'll get started in just a second. No, I'm just kidding. No one's coming in. No one's getting settled. It's a virtual event. Who am I kidding? Hi. Nice to meet you. My name is Jason. I have met very few of you, and the ones I have all been on Zoom meetings. I started in March. So we'll get to that in just a minute. This is me. My email address is here. You can refer back to this. I will try not to beat you down with too many slides in this presentation, but you can refer back to these if you need to later. So what we're going to try to do in the short time I have you today is we're going to pull the curtain back a little bit and show you some insights into what we've been doing as a company in terms of planning and strategy and building a product team. And we'll talk about a little bit about what a product team is and does, and what you can expect because of that over the next year or so. So as Chris said, I am Jason Sellers. I run the product team at Service Autopilot. John and Jonathan and the leadership team noticed a need for a product-focused team for Service Autopilot beginning of 2020 or before. They brought me in March. I have always been a product guy. I have worked for companies larger and smaller than Service Autopilot, and I really, really was excited about coming in here, building a product team, and helping Service Autopilot with the strategy and the why really is what I'm excited about, is the looking at not only what the company wants to do with the product, but why we want to do it, so that we can provide better information to the engineering team so that they can build their house, basically. So it's very exciting. I'm glad to be here, and we'll get started here with the first question, which is what is a product team? Product teams are the planners, the researchers. We look at trends, we look at customer data, we do a lot of user testing, talking to the members. We're planning for the future and then documenting all of that to make everything easier for the development team to build things, and then communicating with the stakeholders and you guys being stakeholders as to what's happening, what's going on, what is in releases, what's coming next, things like that. So it's the planning arm, the strategy part of the product in any business. The first thing we had to look at was building this team. So looking at building a product team, once I came in, I believe wholeheartedly that a good product strategy team is built with internal resources, not external. I know I'm external, but the guys that are doing the planning, the designing, are better if they are the people who know your product. I mean, let's be honest. The people who are best at doing the planning for the future are the people who know the past. And so we built a product team using internal resources. Really excited about the folks that are on this team. We've been working really hard the last few months to start looking at the next step, which is identifying the needs, user testing, talking to you guys, figuring out not only from usage data that we track in the system of what are the most used parts of the system, what are the least, why are they the least, looking at that stuff, and then doing the user testing with you guys one-on-one to look at how you use the system and things like that. These are the two steps before we take any action. The stuff that we're talking about here kind of lends itself to post tickets release. So the tickets that Chris just talked to you all about and that you've been hearing about for a while, and all the V3 work, that will all be part of this, but most of what we're talking about, the projects and the designs, are post that. So we are working on the next round right now. This is generally where I would stop for a minute and do a little testing of the audience to say, got any questions, things like that, but I'm going to just assume that you understand what I'm talking about and move on as we are in a virtual event. So next question is, what the heck is this user testing that you speak of? So step one is to start talking to you guys and gathering feedback. So user testing is a formalized process. It is not just conversational. It is we bring in members, we test them on the system, testing the system, not the member. If the member struggles, it's not on them, it's on the system. So we will have missions or tasks, dispatch these jobs, reschedule these jobs, change an invoice. These are commonly used practices inside the system, and we will watch members do this and record the paths through it, where they get hung up, how long does it take to do a certain task. This is all data that we gather to see how easy it is to use the system, where the bugs are. If we learn a lot of stuff about workarounds. So a lot of members have workarounds that lead back to bugs, right? There's a defect in the system, but rather than spending a lot of time calling and reporting it, they'll find a workaround to it. And now the system is harder to use because it takes them 3 or 4 clicks to get around where they want to go to, where the path we should be having them go through is much easier. So we learn a lot of this stuff and we document it and we use that in our designs to make better decisions. I hope that helps with user testing. The next answer to a question you may have is, well, why have I haven't been tested? This is not at all an exclusive process. We are trying to test big and small, regional, snow, pool, waste removal, everybody. So the last slide in my slide deck will have a link to a form you can fill out to join the member design committee. So we want, bring them all, and we will try to talk to you. There's even questions there about what kinds of things you use the most or would like to be tested on, and when we get there, we'll reach out to you, this kind of stuff. So we want to talk to as many people as we can. We have currently done just under 50 tests already with different members on different things. Some retest. We do this iteratively in our process, which is we may tweak things that we saw that weren't working well and then retest with little changes. These changes aren't out in the wild, they're just in our testing environment, and we say, hey, let's try this again. And the scores go way up, get way better. We say, okay, then we've proven out that these are the things we need to get in front of engineering as changes, and we know that they're changes that members want and need and will be valuable. So that's the key, is making sure that the work we are doing is valuable to you guys. That is what user testing is. I hope that made a lot of sense. I love this quote. The best way to truly know what your customers want and need is to ask them and listen when they answer. And that's a quote by me. I say it all the time. That's a joke that would be a lot funnier if we were all in the same room. So I'm just going to pretend like you're all giggling at my joke. But it is a very good quote, and I'm sure somebody very important said it one time. After the rounds of user testing are done and we've gotten our member feedback, the product team then does the research and designs. This is the meat of it. This is where you really see the value, which is whether it's client portal that's coming out. Pause for applause. We're really excited about that. The new improved estimates functionality, the dispatch board, and the route list, everything that is coming out after this November release is going through a rigorous planning and design phase. We have multiple long sessions a week where we're doing in-depth designs of all of the new features coming out. You've been hearing about V3, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, and you just heard about it from Chris as well. All of this stuff is starting to go through these rigorous design phases to make sure that we're taking the member feedback we hear from you, taking the design functionality that we know, the design methodologies and all of that, and applying that so that you get the best product that you can get out of our system. So the next question you may have is, what are you going to do with all this info and all these designs and all this research? What does this mean for 2021? What are the priorities? And that doesn't mean priorities in which features come out when. This is conceptually and strategically the areas that we really want to focus on. This is the stuff that you should be seeing in what we're doing. You should be seeing these concepts as we move forward. First is ease of use. This is what we heard. We heard it over and over again in our user testing, and we continue to hear it. Make the system easier to use. Make it easier to get data in. Make it feel smaller. Service Autopilot is an enormous program with lots and lots of functionality. It's very robust. Lots and lots of features that flow into other features, and a lot of times those features don't smoothly transition between each other, and that is one of the things we're working on, is making the system feel smaller without taking away functionality. Make you feel like you're flowing through it. Make it more of a wizard, more of conversational usage in a program as much as we can. So fix the issues that I run into along the way. So a lot of focus on scalability, stability, improvement of features, iterating on them once they're released as well. So releasing a new feature, doing some more user testing on it, tweaking it and changing it, making it great for you. Wowing you guys with the stuff that we do is really what we're all focused on. Got to be as easy to use as a tea kettle. That's my metaphorical image there. The next is master version of Service Autopilot. You have heard Jonathan talk about this. You have heard Chris Sims talk about it, I'm sure. If you talk to Scott Howard or Chris Volpe or the training team or the support team, you've heard it talked about as well. It is the way of the future. If we're going to get easier to use and we're going to get more scalable and we're going to go into the future, we've got to have this master version that you also hear called V3. But does that mean V2 gets killed? No, it does not. What it means is that we have a very well-oiled machine as a version of Service Autopilot, but if you have features you want to still go use in V2, that will remain for who knows. We do not have any plan for when that would stop. Our focus in 2020-21, what year is it? Is to really focus on using all the concepts that I've talked about here with the research and design and user testing and all of this to make sure that the features that we roll out in 2021 have all of the best designs we can before the engineering team ever sees them, so that you are getting the best from us that you can get. We are going to do estimates, and we're going to do the dispatch board or the route list next. These are the things that we are working on designing now. Client portal's coming, you know all of that stuff. And then going into next year, there's all kinds of things that we are iterating on and designing for now. We're looking into chemical tracking improvements. We're looking into all kinds of things that are all things that exist, but improving them into the new master version of the software. That is our big focus. Other than ease of use of the current stuff that's out there, also the ease of use of the master version, but making sure that we are building the right things first, and you guys are all getting what you need. I hope I didn't run through this too fast, but it is a lot. It's these iterations of user testing and research and design. It's a big job, but we'll get it done. I love this image for a big job. I'm sure it resonates with a lot of you guys. We'll continue our ongoing efforts to gather stuff. We're going to talk to you. We're going to continue to partner with you guys to make the system better. We don't know it as well as you do, like I said before. You're never done talking to members and gathering research. It's something that we plan to keep going forever. So all of that, thanks. I hope that this made sense to you. I hope it was exciting. I hope it also armed you with a little bit of insight that will make sense when you start seeing things coming out in 2021, that it will map to the things that we've talked about here today. This will be available, and I hope you have a great rest of the virtual conference, and have a great one.